This is the new Workflows designer in Copilot Studio, a new experience adding more AI-first capabilities to traditional path-driven workflows. In this video, I'm going to take a look at the new Workflows designer, highlight what new capabilities it has that make it an AI-first experience, and consider what the arrival of this tool might mean both for Power Automate and for Copilot Studio's other automation canvas, agent flows. Keep watching to find out. My name is Nick DeCourcy. I'm a Microsoft 365 consultant who specialises in AI adoption for small and medium-sized businesses. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for Microsoft 365 Copilot. If you're interested in keeping up with AI advances, make sure you get subscribed to the channel and drop this video a like so you get to see more from me in the future. And if you're interested in working with me, check out the links down in the video description to get in contact. The new Workflows designer is a preview experience. Once available to you, this can be accessed at copilotstudio.preview.microsoft.com. To create new workflows, we will go to flows, and the creation of a workflow has now replaced the creation of an agent flow as the default experience here. And you can immediately see just how different the building canvas looks compared to what we are used to in Power Automate or agent flows. For one thing, it's been turned on its side. I'm going to approach this walkthrough by going through the key differences from traditional Power Automate or agent flow building we can address directly from this workflows canvas. So this assumes familiarity with those products, but it probably also is a good initial overview for anyone with some understanding of automation looking to see where Microsoft is going with their platform. Whereas we are used to triggers that are a distinct variety of nodes that match the action types available to us in flows, here every workflow starts with just a configurable start node, and within this configuration we can address all the different types of trigger actions we already know: recurrence, external service connector, HTTP request, and manual. The core components I might want to work with on the canvas are shown on the left side, and throughout, as I add actions to the canvas, their individual configuration pops up on the right. I can move items around the canvas as I like, but it appears that by default this is set up to visually run on a left to right flow. This is obviously different to agent flows and Power Automate, and very much the trend for this sort of product that we have seen from others like OpenAI. The Microsoft 365 Copilot node is a new action type that allows me to directly interact with Microsoft 365 Copilot from my workflow, giving Copilot a prompt and expecting a response. I can type any prompt here. By default it gets addressed to Copilot, but I can also select agents that I have access to instead. The async toggle determines whether this runs synchronously or asynchronously. That is waiting for the response. And my conversation visible toggle determines whether the chat initiated from here will be visible to me in Copilot chat. What I don't have here right now is the ability to target a specific existing conversation thread or to manage a multi-turn conversation in the scope of an existing thread, something we have had in both agent flows and Power Automate for specific Copilot Studio agent conversation threads for a while now. A really cool thing we see throughout this new experience is per action testing. This is fantastic. So many times AI assisted flows have led me to situations of waiting around for what seems like an age to test if something truly works. More granular testing is good for everyone involved in building. What I don't have either in agent flows or Power Automate is the ability to define an agent directly from the automation canvas. With the agent node, I can run an existing agent if I have one in my environment, but more excitingly, I can define an agent, its model, its instructions, its access to tools, etc., directly in the canvas and use it from here. But I guess the question many of you might ask is, why is this exciting? Why might we want to do this? Well, from my perspective, it's about giving you more flexibility in how you merge deterministic and non-deterministic paths in the context of one task or process. Agents give us a whole set of new capabilities, but for many tasks, their approach is just too freeform for rigid and tightly controlled processes. But in many cases, those rigid and tightly controlled processes have elements that are really tough to represent with traditional deterministic automation, because even where we want to determine the shape of the inputs and outputs, there is logic happening in the middle that is somewhat fuzzy in its nature. I've described this here before as deterministic flows allowing us to build a railway where a train has to travel through certain stations to reach its destination, whereas agent regions are freeways where drivers can change lanes or take different exits to take the most efficient route to their destination. What Microsoft is doing on the Workflows canvas is representing that many journeys involve driving to the station, taking a train, and then picking up a rental car on the other end. The ability to represent and build all this in one place is both an efficiency in the building process, but also an efficiency in the mental models we have of how these processes are represented. It's important to note, though, that agent flows had already taken some steps into this world, with, for example, direct addressability of MCP sources in an action. Essentially, write what you need in natural language, define an MCP target, and make this an action on the canvas. This capability does not currently make its way to workflows, and while these two approaches are somewhat aligned, they are importantly different. So we cannot say that as it stands, this workflows preview is just a straight upgrade line of the AI-first developments we'd already seen in agent flows. Next, we have the classifier action, which is a nice AI-based routing tool we can use to take a previous output or trigger as input and use AI to classify that parameter to determine the route the flow should go on. And this in itself is extremely flexible. I can attach a downstream node to every output of the classifier, or I can connect multiple nodes to the same route. I could even go on and add more downstream nodes where outputs get merged back together after some action's been taken. This is fantastic. Routing flexibility is something really hard in traditional Power Automate, and you can end up with spectacularly complicated flows driven by the inflexibility of routing rather than the complexity of the process being automated. Can you do similar with run after, etc.? Yes, but it's always more complicated, it looks a mess, and requires mental gymnastics to get right. This just lets you connect the lines to the right place and the workflow will run as you desire. And just to note, we could do similar with conditions and switches too, so you don't need that AI-powered input analysis to modernise your flow routing. Prompts have been updated too, so they're directly addressable on the canvas. This is great, as prompts are somewhat of a pain to manage elsewhere, but it should be noted that we have a great deal less flexibility than we do with traditional prompt actions. My model choices are limited, I cannot select Foundry models, so UI 10 out of 10 forward momentum from what we had already at this point, more questionable. Another area where agent flows already made improvements over Power Automate was human-in-the-loop review, something that is incredibly relevant in the AI age. Yet, of the two new approaches we see in agent flows, human-in-the-loop and multi-flow approvals, only the message-based review capability is in workflows at this point. The multi-step approvals tool in agent flows is great, and another place where that is currently somewhat more AI first. However, I feel sure that as time goes on, if workflows continues to develop, there will be a bit more parity here. And then we have new functions too, everything you'd expect as inbuilt capabilities from Power Automate and agent flows, but some new AI capabilities like chunk text and parse the text from a document. This targets clear deficiencies we've seen in Microsoft automation tools that make it hard to grab one type of input and convert it to something usable by another. This is feedback I see a lot praising other platforms. It looks like Microsoft has heard this and started to do something about it. Last, let's consider notes. This is an important one as it works and is supportable into the future are two different standards. Often the former happens and we don't realise we haven't achieved the latter until we run into a problem. Having flexible notes on the canvas help with this. There have been notes before, but they have ended up somewhat hidden, so this makes a lot of sense. There's a lot to like about this new Workflows designer. It definitely looks more modern, appears more flexible, and surfaces AI capabilities more directly. But if you're looking at this and thinking, why is this a new product rather than a new version of Power Automate? I think that's a very logical question to be asking. Right now, I will highlight that this is a preview capability, so where and how it will eventually land is not exactly clear. But since the arrival of agent flows some time ago, there has been this bifurcation of Microsoft's automation tool landscape that seems to have much more to do with AI ambitions and licensing than it does to do with deep-rooted differences in technology approaches. From a technical perspective, Workflows is a different UX framed over the same guts as Power Automate, as was the case for agent flows. There are indicators of truly new technical capabilities here, such as the flexibility of routing paths, but at its core, what you are looking at is a remodeling of the same range of actions you can jump across to Power Automate to use. Even aspects that seem entirely new to workflows, like the Microsoft 365 Copilot node, are artificially gated features that could work in any flow. How do I know this? Here's a Microsoft 365 Copilot action node from Workflows in a traditional Power Automate flow. I'm not going to dig into how to make this happen, as it's clearly not Microsoft intends, but it's 100% verifiable that on a purely technical level, new capabilities like this could be available across Power Automate and agent flows as well. This isn't to say that Workflows is a step in the wrong direction. It's absolutely not. I'm very excited about what I'm seeing here, and the alignment that exists that allows someone with existing Power Automate knowledge to just jump over to this new UI and understand is fantastic. But I do think that from the perspective of businesses that have heavily invested in Power Platform, in citizen development or makers, and routinely buy lots of Power Automate premium licenses, there is a legitimate reason to pause and squint suspiciously at how Microsoft is choosing to develop these products. When agent flows arrived, they created a slightly different experience to Power Automate, targeted at Copilot Studio and reliant on Copilot Studio billing. There were definitely capabilities in agent flows that didn't exist in Power Automate, but for the most part those differences fit logically into scenarios where AI first driven from agents would make most sense. However, with the arrival of Workflows, this is no longer the case. Workflows isn't a slightly differentiated version of Power Automate lightly tailored to Copilot Studio. It's an objectively smooth and more modern and more future-looking experience. Yet it is 100% bound to Copilot Studio billing, meaning that those with a Power Automate license are just out of luck. But what does this mean in practical terms? Well, agent flows were largely built to be automations that ran within the scope of agents. Sure, you could use them for different things too, but there weren't a lot of reasons to do so. If you needed a flow that ran from an agent, build an agent flow. If you need one that's going to run when you update a file in SharePoint, build a flow in Power Automate. From a licensing perspective, this worked well. Basic flows in Power Automate are seeded to all Microsoft 365 license users, and any agent flows initiated from an interactive agent session are seeded to anyone with a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. There were really only two places the specifics of Copilot Studio licensing became tricky. First, autonomous agents from Copilot Studio, and second, pay-as-you-go or metered use of Copilot Studio agents interactively. Everywhere else, we were just dealing with scenarios that were well worn back from the Power Virtual Agents days. But now, Workflows might be about to throw that understanding on its head. I like Workflows enough that I want to build everything there. It is designed more explicitly to be an automation layer orchestrating agents, not one that is purpose-designed to be orchestrated by agents. There are lots of places I'd like, for example, to run a workflow and use that classification action when a file updates in SharePoint. But even with my Microsoft 365 license, my Power Automate Premium license, and my Microsoft 365 Copilot license, I'm still going to be billed Copilot credits for that type of use. This is a billing problem for businesses, an affront to organisations that have invested in Power Automate and are looking for the latest features, and a real messaging conundrum for Microsoft. And given that Workflows is currently in preview, my hope is that this is a problem they decide to make go away before GA. I'd love to see a situation where this builder approach is standard, whether or not you're building traditional workflows or something more in the agentic space. I could even get behind something like per-action Copilot Studio billing, where AI-centered tools like classifier always incur credit charge, even if run in the context of a Power Automate licensed user. Perhaps in the future, Power Automate needs two premium connector tiers to separate those that are covered by licenses and those that are covered only by consumption. As a daily Power Automate user, Workflows is one of the most exciting advances I've seen for a while. The fact is, this mix of deterministic automation with agentic reasoning is the right direction, even in an age of vibe coding and vibe working. And this new approach, in my opinion, sees Microsoft in the firmest way yet put its flag in the sand, signalling that while its maker tools might be evolving, there remains an important place for the maker approach in making AI work in our businesses. And for lots of reasons, better than just self-preservation of someone who has spent far too many hours building Power Platform tools. This is a direction I firmly believe in. What do you think? Is it a direction you believe in too? What do you think of this new Workflows experience and how it fits into the entire automation landscape? Start that conversation down in the comments. Thanks for watching through to the end. Until the next video, bye bye.